Hey guys, welcome back to What's Up Wednesday. Today is Wednesday, February 21st, 2024, and I am your host, Brittany McAllister. I'm here in Omaha, Nebraska, and something so much fun over the weekend happened. I was meeting a client at some of our new construction houses, and he told me that he's been watching our videos. So I thought that was really fun and proof that actual humans watch these. So if you're watching again, hello, and welcome back. And if this is the first time you're seeing my videos, welcome. We've got some good stuff to go over today. So ignore this like random mohawk I'm having of like little baby hairs. Let's jump in with what's going on in the market. So every week we look at what is going on in Douglas and Sarpy counties, and I like to look at single family. Today I did sprinkle in one new statistic for us, but right now in Douglas and Sarpy County for single family homes, there are 437 existing homes for sale, which if you're following along is a little bit less than last week. Last week we had seen a little bit of a plateau. So we're in terms of existing homes for sale, we're actually a little bit less this week. However, for completed new construction homes, we actually saw an increase. So I think these are probably just a lot of houses that are getting finishing touches, and there's about 10, was it 10? 13 more completed new construction homes than there were last week on the market, which is a lot actually. So we ended up with a total of 635 active single family homes for sale in Douglas and Sarpy counties. And I went ahead and took off the single family filter just to see if we throw in, townhomes, condos, duplexes, villas, threw in all of those into the mix, and it added an additional 103 homes for sale. So in light of, we have a new listing coming tomorrow that is a townhome out in Elkhorn that we're really excited about. And so I wanted to throw that into the mix this week for you. And also, obviously, we understand that not everybody wants a single family house. There is a high need for townhomes and condos and villas. And really that, this kind of goes into what we're going to talk about with No Dumb Questions, but that little bit of a niche market for buyers that want to build equity in a home in real estate, but they don't necessarily want all of the yard work or the exterior maintenance. Those options are really, really good for those buyers. So that's what we have going on there. And then last week, if you remember, we had 189 homes that went under contract in the last 7 days. This week we had 188. So basically the same number of homes went under contract week over week, which I think that was, and it was literally the same the week before. So I thought it was funny. I had seen on the news a story about how because of the little bit of a tick up in interest rate that they had seen mortgage applications drop, and that might be true and that might be a timing situation. And yet here in our Omaha market, we're still seeing about the same number of homes go under contract every week. So it's obviously not affecting necessarily the pending sales at this point in time. So just something to keep in mind for that. Which that actually is a perfect segue. Did not plan that on my own, but a perfect segue into what we're going to talk about with No Dumb Questions this week. So it's not so much a question, but more of a situation that I ran into over the weekend, not once, not twice, but about 3 different times with different buyers in all different price points. And so I thought it would be a really good conversation to bring up, which is timing the market. I had a few different buyers, mention it in different ways, but say, we kind of want to see what rates do. We want to kind of sit back. Sorry, I want to sit back and see what rates do. Or, what was another way they described it? I know they're supposed to come down, so we might just wait to see if they do come down, or kind of all of those different scenarios. And so I saw a graph, and we can't decide if I saw it in my head and I dreamt about this graph or if I literally saw it, but I spent a decent amount of time trying to find it and I couldn't find it. So we did a little arts and crafts and we recreated it for you. So here's what we have. So it's honestly, you guys, the real estate market is basic supply and demand. And I'm not an economist and I'm not a mathematician, and yet I have been in this business a long time and I know how supply and demand works. And if you know anybody who has bought or sold a house in the last goodness, 4 or 5 years, you have seen this firsthand. And if it's you've experienced this firsthand, which is this. So as interest rates drop, buyer demand increases. And we're seeing that. I mean, we already saw it a couple weeks ago. We've seen it at the beginning of this year versus, even end of last year or middle of last year, where, when rates were high, buyer demand was a little bit less because, the buyer, what they can afford, people's buying power is less when the interest rates are higher. And yet and then of course, when interest rates come down, demand goes up because their buying power is a little bit higher. Now, what's important to note about this is, I feel like we could have like a second, like graph number 2. So when buyer demand is super high and we have an inventory situation, an inventory shortage situation like we've been experiencing, like I said, for the last 4 or 5 years, if buyer demand is super high, what does that mean? When inventory is low, that means that the prices of the homes are going to go up a lot higher than what they would. So it ends up being this like kind of a vicious cycle where I truly don't feel like anyone's, I don't want to say like you're not getting out ahead, but nobody's like timing the market in such a perfect way that like, oh my gosh, you've outsmarted everyone else. So what I mean by that is, okay, let's say interest rates right now, they're 6.5. Let's say they get down to 5.5 or even right around 6. Okay, sweet. Well, we know buyer demand is going to skyrocket. Okay, well, what happens when buyer demand skyrockets? Well, you end up seeing what we've been seeing for the last several weeks and honestly last several years, which is multiple offers on houses. Okay, cool. If we get multiple offers on houses, what does that mean? It drives the price up. And when the price gets driven up, buyers are actually paying probably the same, if not more, for their monthly payment than what they would pay if they didn't have to compete for a home and got a higher interest rate. So my coach and I were talking this morning about I'm like, how do I get it into these people's heads? Like, it's not always best to try to time the market. It's really, the market is the market. It happens regardless of what you have going on in your personal life. And so that's why we always go back to doing a needs analysis and really figuring out what is the root cause of why you need to move. And truly every objection that we talk about when it comes to buying or selling real estate boils down to 2 different root categories, which is money and time. So when somebody talks about interest rate, like, hey, we're going to try to time the market, interest rates are not great right now. Okay, well, interest rates just are what they are. We know historically that 6.5% is actually a baller interest rate. It might not feel that way because we all got to live life where interest rates were 2 and 3%, which was absurd. But 6.5% is a great interest rate. And so it comes down to the interest rate doesn't really matter. What matters is your monthly payment. And so what matters is what are you having to pay each month in relation to what you're bringing in every month. And so, let's talk about what you want your monthly payment to be, and then let's work backwards and figure out what your buying power looks like. Or, what is your down payment? We also talked about right now, there's so many creative financing options going on that if you don't have, it's crazy to me that people still think that there's this notion out there that people think I still need 20% to put down to buy a house. You don't need 20%, you don't need 15%, you don't need 10%, you don't need anywhere near those numbers anymore to get to get financing for a home. And so I think that's a really big misconception out there as well. And so people think they can't afford a house because they don't necessarily have a ton of money saved. And so that's another conversation we can have, which is how much are you putting down? Now, on the flip side, of course, how much you put down dictates how much your loan amount is going to be, which will in turn affect your monthly payment. So it all comes back to what are you comfortable spending each month and how can we find a home that's going to match that budget for that. And of course, we talked about buying power already. Okay, and then the second one is time. Well, it all comes down to timing, and not so much timing the market, but really timing your life. Have you run out of space in your current house? Or do you have too much space in your current house, too much to clean, if you will? Or maybe you have, everyone's moved out and you are done with this house and you want something different. Real estate at the end of the day is driven by life events, and it's always been that way and it will always be that way. And so timing is the timing of your life, not the timing of what's going on in the market or what's going on in the economy necessarily. Now, I'm not going to force you to sell your home or force you to buy a home if it's bad for your situation. And that's why it's important to me as an agent who does this day in and day out with people that I love and referrals. It's because I care about people. And so I want to do a needs analysis to figure out what is the most important things to you and what is it a good time to buy or sell. There's been several times where I've talked people out of it. Like, hey, right now probably isn't a good time. Why don't you stay where you're at, save up some money, do X, Y, and Z, and then we'll get you into a house. Or maybe it's not the best option to sell your house. Maybe it would be better to rent your house out and use that as a source of income. And so those are conversations I'm having as well. So for me, and I'm not just your realtor, which I am, but I also feel like I can help you advise you on, building wealth through real estate and what that looks like and what you have going on in your life. So all of that stems from just some people that had said they want to time the market. And I just want to reiterate and drill it into people's heads. It's not about timing the market. It's about figuring out what's best for you and what's going on in your life. So that's our no dumb question / no dumb scenario for the day. And we had one other thing, but I feel like this video is getting kind of long, so we'll chat about that next week, which is maybe it's like a little teaser for next week. What are the best houses right now that are selling the fastest? So if you've considered selling, tune in next week and we'll chat about what is flying off the market right now and what is maybe not. And that's all we have. So we'll see you next week, and thank you so much for listening.